Chris Watkin back again for another video in my series Estate Agency Stories. And today I'm joined by Wendy Peterman, very well known in the industry, a London estate agent of many years. Thanks for joining me today, Wendy.
Thanks for inviting me.
What I'd like to do is, estate agency has been in your family blood for almost forever, but you came to estate agency quite late. So what I'd like to do, Wendy, is talk about your story, your childhood, your original job, and how you found a state agency and the trials and the tribulations of running a family business, because there's going to be a lot of people watching this, spinning, not only running your own business, but spinning the plates of relationships in a family must cause some very interesting interactions. So, and what you've learned over the years to deal with that, so we can teach the boys and girls out there in estate agency land and letting agency land. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Good stuff. Okay, so let's roll the clock back. When you were a teenager, did you want to be an estate agent?
No.
Had your dad and uncle already started the estate agency at this point?
I think they had just started. They started the estate agency in the 60s, so yes. But I wasn't really aware of. Well, I didn't really take any notice of what they were doing. They didn't really talk about it to us, so I was too busy being a teenager.
How many siblings did you have?
One.
Just the one?
Yeah.
And brother or sister?
Sister. Yeah.
Older or
she's
younger?
2 years younger, just under 2 years younger.
So you're the
than
big
me.
sister then?
I am the big sister.
So you protect her and...
I was very bossy.
What did, as you were being brought up, what did your mother and father teach you as a child? What skill sets?
And this goes with me through my whole life. The one thing that they taught me was treat other people how you would like to be treated. And I think out of all the lessons that I've learned, that's the one I carry with me at all times. And it's really important. My mum didn't work while we were growing up. She did eventually go back to, she was a manicurist, but my dad worked 7 days a week. I hardly ever saw him while we were growing up. He worked very, very long hours. And his work ethic was phenomenal. And I think that's the other thing that both my sister and I have got from them is, you do a job, you do it properly. We don't half do anything.
With your dad working 7 days a week, do you think you missed out on anything of your childhood?
Probably. Until I was about 7, I didn't see my dad. But he was out before we woke up. He was back. That was before he was in the property business. They ran a sweet shop in Charing Cross Road. And then once they kind of transferred over to the property business, he didn't work such long hours. And we did, we had family holidays. We did stuff together. I don't think I suffered.
Okay, so your dad taught you hard work.
Yeah, definitely.
What specifically did your mum teach you?
Kindness, tidiness. She's the politest person that you will ever meet. She's just a lovely lady. So if I'm as lovely as her, I'll be very happy.
You still got your parents now?
I'm luckily have both my parents and I adore them.
Lovely. It's a lovely thing to have. Your dad's 90 and how old's your mum?
85.
85, that's good.
And they're amazing. My dad still plays golf. They go on cruises, they go on holidays, they're very active. My mum visits all of her friends who don't have their husbands. She's always out. They do a lot of charity work, which is the other thing actually that we learnt from them is, to look after people that aren't as lucky as you are.
So with a good foundation,
Yeah.
You went to secretarial college, which, they don't exist anymore nowadays, do they? Did you want to be a secretarial?
No, I didn't. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Honestly, I think it's really tough to ask a 16-year-old or 7 what they think they're going to do for the rest of their life. Who knows? But Mum said to me, go to secretarial college, because I did, and at least you come out and you can do something. So I went to secretarial college.
Touch type?
I can touch type. I type very quickly. I still can. I can remember a few bits and pieces of shorthand, but I never was that good at it. I had an absolute ball. It was just hilarious. But I did go, and I did come out with a RSA qualification, and went to work in the excitement of wood pulp importing.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go. I didn't
In
know
the
there was
accounts department. Who
wow.
knew? I can even remember and it's a long time ago. I can even remember the name of the company.
What did you learn? So you must have been working there in the 70s.
Yeah,
Okay. Um,
it was so boring.
what did you learn? Had you met your future husband at this point, or
No,
you were young, free, and single, and ready to mingle?
actually, I met my first husband when I went just before I went to secretarial college. So yeah, I had met him. I met him obviously I was 16 when I met him. Yeah, so I had met him.
But you met him, but you weren't romantically involved. So I believe that you ended up going into advertising in the
Yeah,
late 70s. Is that right?
yeah. So
But
I
they were
was in
interesting
the
times.
that was amazing. I was in this wood pulp importing company, typing in the accounts department.
Balled out your school.
Absolutely, it was so boring. And his brother worked in an advertising agency, and I was moaning obviously one day about how bored I was, and he said, "I'll see if I can get you a job."
That was nice.
Yeah. So I ended up going to work in this particular advertising agency as a secretary.
More
Can't
in,
even
more in
remember what.
central London.
It was an agency called Yellowhammer, I think, and it was in East London. So it was near the hospital, near the Blind Beggar pub.
And did you enjoy that?
Yeah, it was okay, but it was okay. I was still a secretary. I think I just didn't like being a secretary. It was really boring.
Why did you then pack up your bags and go travelling around
So,
Asia in 1980 then?
because that's what my future husband wanted to do. And
So by this time you'd become romantically involved.
yeah, that's a whole nother story. But yes, we had been engaged and we got unengaged. And he said, let's go traveling. So that's what we did. So we literally put our backpacks on and traipsed through Southeast Asia, which was amazing in the 80s.
Are you glad you did it?
Yeah, absolutely.
What did you learn when you were out there?
Not to trust anybody, look at a bigger picture, live for the day, don't plan too much. Every day we never knew what we were doing from one day to the next. So it was yeah.
A lot of
Great.
people like certainty in their life. Do you think that taught you the fact you just deal with what comes in front of you?
It did then, and I am very good at dealing with what comes along. But as I've got older, certainty has become much more important to me.
You were out there for a couple of years and you came back.
Yeah.
And eventually, within a year or so, you ended up at Saatchi and Saatchi in the early 80s. Bet that was fun.
It was
You'd
amazing.
married by this time.
Yeah, we came back. We got married in 1982. And
You had a little one almost straight away.
84, I had the first one, and 86, I had the second one. So yeah. But I freelanced through when my daughter was born. I used to freelance, so I carried her in a little pouch for 9 months, and I was back in advertising by then, but not at Saatchi's, in a studio in Charlotte Street. And until she started crawling, and there were scalpels on the floor and the rest, she just came with me wherever I went. But once she was crawling, it was like, okay, I have to actually
Put her in the nursery.
put her in. Well, I had to, yeah, get some childcare and go and work.
What did you learn? Being quite a senior woman. The advertising agency is, if you think estate agencies male driven, my perception of advertising is very male orientated.
Especially then in the 80s.
How did you get to the point? Did you have things put in your way or barriers put in your way that were specific to your sex?
No. It's really interesting because I look back on those times and it's almost, we used to use our sex, not
Yep.
to get what we needed. The whole culture at the time was so different. I mean, between men and women and all of that interaction, it was, if I knew that I was going to have to deal with a really difficult creative, for instance, so my job was a kind of link between creatives, the thinkers of the ideas, and the account people who sold the ideas to clients. If I knew that I was having a really important meeting with one of the creatives, I would dress appropriately so that I would get what I wanted. I mean, I would never dream of doing that now. You're not going to wear a little short skirt and a pair of tights to go into a meeting now, but it kind of worked in those days. So it's almost, yeah, it was weird. Obviously, the more senior you became, the less important that was. There was still a respect between men and women. And if you were good at your job, you got on, as I did. I mean, I was lucky enough to, make it all the way to the board at Saatchi's. And I was the first woman in the industry to have the role of Creative Services Director.
Do you think that inspired other women in the advertising industry?
I think there was a lot of other women doing it as well. I'd like to think I did, but I don't. There was no social media in those days. There was nothing there was nowhere to shout it, like now. You just did your job. You just got on with it.
Was that your favourite job, do you think?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. It definitely was my favourite job.
Was it more than a job? It was a career.
It was a life.
It was a way of life.
Yeah. I mean, it was a way of life and everyone at Saatchi's at that time was in this weird bubble of Saatchi's. And I mean, the hours were very, very long. We used to live it, breathe it.
How did you square that with having 2 children? I mean, did you suffer from mum guilt?
Massive mum guilt because, sometimes, a lot of the time I wasn't there to put them to bed at night. Sometimes if we'd worked a pitch, we worked all night, used to go home in the morning, get them up, get them dressed, go back to work. Trying to get to things like nativity plays, sports days. I'd go, mobile phones had just come along by then, I'd go, or beepers, I'd go and the phone would beep, the beeper would beep, whatever. It was a really hard juggle.
Your husband, was you still married at this time?
Yeah.
Did he step up to the mark at the time?
Yes, he did. He was brilliant with the kids. He was brilliant with putting them to bed. He was at university, so he was studying. So I was the only person working. But he was really good at looking after the kids. He was fantastic.
How this doesn't happen. I haven't come across this a lot, but I have come across it a number of times where quite obviously, you were the main bread earner, the income provider to the house. How did he square that with the normal thing is the man gets judged on what he brings in with his money. And again, I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just saying this is life, and the woman has a little part-time job. Again, I'm not deriding that, and brings in a bit of money, and the balance was almost the other way around in your relationship.
Yeah.
How did you square that one off? What advice would you give to someone watching this?
I mean, ultimately, it was the marriage failed, and it was partly because of that.
The perceived imbalance of your ex-husband.
No, wasn't good at talking about things. So eventually, I became slightly resentful that it was always me going to work, and I didn't talk about things, and it got worse and worse. The advice I would give to anyone who in that situation
where the woman
is working with a bit of the mum guilt, because if you haven't got kids, I wouldn't think it's an issue. But the whole thing of trying to balance a home life and do the cooking and the cleaning and going to work, is talk about it, because I didn't, and ultimately it caused the failure of the marriage. I'm sure. Anyway, I would say to anybody,
Just keep
if you
talking.
feel bad about it, you've got to talk about it. Don't leave it. Don't bury it.
What advice would you give to men who have a partner who is obviously driving her career and also a mother at the same time?
Do things without being asked. That is the biggest thing that would make, well, certainly would have made me happy. It's rather than asking if you can take the washing out of the washing machine or can you cook a dinner, come home one night and let there be a dinner cooked. Do things, just think about all the different things that your partner does and do some of them without being asked.
So unfortunately, your marriage broke down in the early 2000s. You were still working in advertising. You still had your kids. How old were your kids in 2000?
Uh, 13 and 15,
Okay, so challenging times for them.
very difficult for them.
Okay, I assume that did they stay with you?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, you're still working the long hours, still suffering from the mum guilt, and then illness struck.
Yeah,
You nearly died.
yeah.
What happened?
I was in a bar one night after work. I'd been training really hard because I was also training to run the London Marathon. And I literally passed out on the floor. I hadn't felt quite right all day, but you just think, well, whatever. Passed out on the floor. Someone got me home, and I actually don't remember a lot of what happened, but I know I had a terrible temperature. I was shaking, whatever else. My then partner, who is now my husband, took me to the doctor. They told me to go and take some paracetamol and ibuprofen every 2 hours. I actually said to the doctors, I'm allergic to ibuprofen. And she said, well, it's not on your records. You need to take it. And within 2 days, I was bloated. I was yellow. I couldn't speak.
So that was your
Some
liver.
massive.
That must have been your liver breaking down.
Yeah,
if you were
it
yellow.
was my liver. I was in the right state. And my mum phoned one day to see how I was, and I was totally incoherent. And she literally just came rushing down, and they wanted to take me to hospital. I wouldn't go to hospital because my local hospital, I won't go there. So they took me to a private doctor in Harley Street, and all the blood tests and all sorts of things were done from there.
What did you have?
Don't really know. We never found out. Some part of it was an ibuprofen allergy, and he thought that the other part was some strain of Asian flu. But it literally, honestly, I look at photos of me then. I was 6 stone. I had no hair.
So
Couldn't work.
So basically, your organs were packing up. You lost your hair.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was awful.
You got better, obviously.
Yeah.
But what did that experience do for your life?
Because part of it was probably stress related, it just made me look at everything and made me feel even worse about the fact that I'd missed so much with my kids. But I was determined that I had to change. I had to change things. I couldn't go back to that lifestyle of, long hours drinking, all the other things that we used to do. I just knew, well, I didn't want to. It was almost like something came along and went, enough's enough. You just can't do that anymore.
Do you think in hindsight it was a gift that it happened?
Absolutely, 100%.
Tom Panos says sometimes the best presents come worse wrapped.
Yeah, yeah,
By the sounds of it, this is...
yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd been made redundant 3 times over a period of time, and even dealing with a redundancy and then having to face trying to find another job and go again. I mean, the chance of actually going to work somewhere else where maybe that wouldn't have, I knew I would always be safe, was a massive.
How did you deal with being made redundant all those times?
Well, the first time I got made redundant, I was actually pregnant with my daughter. Um,
It wasn't because you were pregnant, was it? Because
no,
in them days,
no, but there was nothing in those days. You know, when I went back to when I was pregnant with my son, Saatchi said to me, "You can have 3 months off, and if you don't come back in 3 months, you won't have your job." But that was how, you know.
is it true the stories they said about them?
Yeah. Yes.
But you said, by the sounds of it, you were becoming to an age now where you wanted a bit more stability in your
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
and this kind of shook you up, shook your
It really shook
foundations.
me up. And that redundancy thing, you just have to brush yourself down and get up and go again. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to know that, as personal as it feels to be made redundant, it's a business decision.
I can't disagree with you.
It's tough.
I've been through it twice. It hurts at the time. Sometimes actually, it's opened doors that you
Yeah.
wouldn't have done
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
So you had a chat with your dad, who was running his estate agency. So that I think the estate agency Petermans was run by him and his brother. Is that right?
Yeah. So he'd been asking me for probably years to come into the business, and I was like, no, I love my advertising life. And then all of this happened, and he said to me, come and do this, do something different. And it was just, you know, like you say, have some certainty, have a bit of stability, go home at 6 o'clock every night, and know you're safe. And actually, that was in my head. It was like a safe thing to do, because I'd been so scared about dying, and it was a safe route.
So estate agency was a choice. I've never heard of that because it was a safe choice.
But I had no idea what estate agency was. I had no idea. Just seemed much more sensible than advertising.
Just as crazy.
I know. I know that now.
So the firm is being run by your dad and your uncle,
And my cousin Howard at that point.
and his son
Yeah.
was Howard, but he was more on the commercial side, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Was he in the commercial side still then in 2004?
Yeah. He was on the commercial side, and we had an office in Edgware. Well, we still do have an office in Edgware. So Howard was in Edgware in the North London branch, and Dad wanted me to come into the South London branch.
How soon were you out there valuing houses?
3 months.
I mean, your dad's 90 now, which means he was in his early 70s.
Yeah.
Was basically, do you think I mean, early 70s, still being an estate agent,
Yeah.
he's good going.
Yeah, but he still wasn't out valuing. He wasn't being an estate agent. The estate agency was kind of run by the people that worked in the estate agency.
Is your dad a businessman who just happens to own an estate agency?
Yeah, he's a property man who happens to own.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So
He
property's
knows
his
property
love.
inside out. It has been his life always. So I went into Petermans. I looked around and thought, this is a disaster. Fired everyone.
I was about to say, how did the staff feel about basically the owner's daughter being parachuted in?
Well, the staff that were there then really weren't impressed. And because they knew that I'd never worked in a estate agency before, they obviously thought that I didn't know what I was doing. But the fact is that within the department I ran in Saatchi's, I had a team of 40 people. I was responsible for the money. I was responsible for reporting.
So you know how to run a business. You know how to motivate people.
Yeah,
You just
exactly.
Need to,
yeah, you
I mean,
just.
selling houses is simple, isn't it? You know.
Well,
It's
if
not,
you're
not
good
said
at
it was
it,
easy.
it's
I never said it was
simple.
easy, but fundamentally, it's
Yeah.
get the house on the market, sell the bloody
Yeah.
things, and make sure everyone does their
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the simple part. It's not easy, but it's simple.
But I didn't like at that time, the properties that we had on were I wanted better properties.
Were you at the bottom run then?
Yeah.
Lower quartile?
Yeah. And I wanted better. And I thought it was a better idea to just change the team, get in people around me that I believed in that actually would support me, because I did know I didn't know anything. And that's what I did. So
When do you think in your mind you became an estate agent?
It literally within months
Did
because I
you?
loved it. As
I was about
soon
to
as
say,
I
did
got
you
in
fall
there,
in
I
love with
loved
it?
it. Yeah.
Because that's the problem with estate agencies. I mean, I still crave. I'd love to get back to the coalface.
Yeah, and I love valuing. I still love
Yes,
valuing.
it is the best bit.
I still do value. But
What do you love about it?
well, one, I'm nosy, so I like looking at other people's
I
houses.
love looking in airing cupboards.
I don't know about airing cupboards. I really like looking at other people's decor. I like them think, oh, that's a good idea. And I like meeting people. And for me, it's really important if someone's put their trust in you and they've invited you into their home, that you take them seriously, but hopefully get them to trust you so that you can give them, the service they deserve.
How did you get through the 2008 credit crunch? Because it really did hit London hard. I know you bounced back quicker than everyone else, but it really did hit you guys hard.
Yeah, it did. Thank God we've got a very big rental portfolio. That's all I can say. And to anyone starting a business now, I would say have both, because it is swings and roundabouts. And when one's up, one's down. I mean, yeah.
Did you ever have any squeaky bum times during that, or was it, it's hard work, but just gone on with it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was tough, but yeah, we got through it.
You've now been in the estate agency game now for 18 years, nearly 19 years. The last part I want to talk about is the challenges of running a family business. You've got your dad, who's 90 now.
Yep.
So I'm assuming that he doesn't put his oar in and ring you 10 times a day asking how things are.
No, he does.
Have you still got your uncle?
No, he
No,
passed away last year.
Okay, sorry to hear that. And you've got Howard as well. Have you got any other family in the business? You've got
Yeah, Ben, my son.
Ben, your son. Talk to me about the challenges of running a family business and what you've done to make things better.
It's really difficult to separate the personal from the business. So what I found was that whenever I saw my dad, we ended up talking about work, which I found really frustrating because I still wanted to be
He's your dad.
Wendy, his daughter.
Yeah.
But I was Wendy, his business partner. But I kind of wanted to be that as well because I knew he respected me for my business acumen. And it's still really difficult to kind of make that separation. And it's the same with Ben and I, where our relationships changed because work you can't help it. You just end up talking about work at any situation. Howard and I are slightly different because I don't see Howard very often. And we love each other to bits and we are each other's absolute support. But it's much easier to talk about work or talk about personal. It doesn't infringe. But the other two, it's really difficult to separate it.
Can you separate it?
No.
So would your advice be just accept it?
Yeah, I think you have to in the end because you can, you wind up going around the bend trying to make it something it's never going to be. Everyone's got the same goal at the end of the day. And however you try and split it, it just...
Have you tried lots of different ways to say, right, this is family town?
Yeah, and I've said, with Ben it's much easier because we've talked about it a lot more. And we've said, right, well, if it's a weekend, we're not going to talk about work. We still do, but we don't talk about it quite as much. With my dad, it's so important to him. It's his life. And whatever I've done to try and say, can we not, he'll phone me on a Saturday because I've said to him, don't talk about work on the weekends. He'll phone me on a Saturday or a Sunday and go, I know you don't want to talk about this, and then off we go.
But do you, we all crave the admiration and proverbial pat on the back from our parents. Do you think the fact that you're involved in the business has meant that you've had more of that than probably a normal daughter-father relationship would get?
I know that he thinks that I do a great job, and he tells me a lot.
That must be
So
nice, because many people don't get the affirmation of their parents.
yeah, it is. It's great.
But it comes with a price.
Yeah,
And the price is you don't switch off.
no,
But would your advice be to anyone watching this, just accept that? Don't try and change it.
yeah,
Because you can't change him, can you? He's
no,
90
and I
years old.
wouldn't, and I love him too much to even try. So for me, it's just that's how it is. My now, as he's got older, is trying to manage his fears. He's got a lot more cautious as he's got older.
Well, you said you had got cautious as you were getting.
Yeah, weirdly, yeah. So
Do you
and
think that's just an age thing, that as you get older you do get
yeah,
more
maybe,
cautious?
yeah, maybe. But I know there's a lot of things I carry that I don't tell him now because he's not there all the time. He doesn't know all sorts of things that go on. It's like, why would he need to?
That's what I
He
said.
doesn't need to. I don't want, and he is a worrier, as am I. I don't need him to worry all weekend because there's been a leak in a flat or something. Or, interest rates have had a massive effect and blah, 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 whatever it may be. And Howard and I will always deal with things. And then when it's sorted, we'll go back and tell him that that's what's happened and this is what's happening. It's kind of...
Did you have any issues early on about letting go of the reins of power? Or was he pretty good at that?
No, he's terrible at it.
Still?
Still. And so am I.
So, like daughter, like father, like daughter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's not letting it go enough, and you're not letting it go enough for Ben either.
Yeah. He is, to be fair, he is now. He's miles better than he used to be.
Is that because of the type of personality type he is that he loves to be in control and his biggest fear is probably being taken advantage of by others?
No, it's because his brain just never stops going. He literally just thinks about things. He's always thinking, well, if we did this or...
Okay, but that's the difference
It's
between
not a
being in
control
control.
thing. It's not a control thing.
Is it a control thing with you?
It's being rubbish at delegation with me. I'm a terrible delegator.
Is that because you're a perfectionist and no one can do the job better
I
than you?
always think I can do it better.
Have you learned that by actually letting go, they might not be as good, but you can get more done?
I'm learning that now.
How have you learned that?
I've been going through a very, very tough few weeks, and found a mentor through Agents Together, who's amazing. And once I started talking to him, he showed me, we talked about stuff. He got me immediately. He's an amazing guy. And talking to him about boundaries and delegation is what I'm working on now.
And would you say that you are a happier person in yourself and at work because of that?
Not yet, but I will be.
But you know where the path is.
I know the path.
I can remember that conversation that we had a good 4 or 5 months ago. And I suggested that you took someone on to mentor, because I think that there's advantages there to helping, like a mini-me, guide you, but also someone help and guide you yourself. Because we don't all know the answers, do we?
No. And amazingly, you do talk to your mentors. If I could now, I would just be a mentor. I love it. It's just so nice to help other people. But you learn so much from them. Even when you're talking to them and then you say, well, have you thought about doing that? And then you go, I haven't even thought about doing that. That's a really good idea. I'm going to do it myself. But having a mentor, and Spencer is my second mentor. So I had one.
Spencer Lawrence?
Yeah.
Wow.
He's amazing.
You don't get much better than that,
No.
mate. He is top drawer.
He's really, even in the short time that we've been talking, he's helped me so much.
He's in my top 5 favourite agents in the UK.
Well, I haven't met him yet, but I'm going to, because he's not that far from me.
He's not that far from you, is he? Do so. Top drawer. Absolute top drawer. Spinning the plates of a decent estate agency, letting agency in South London, your cousin's running the North London commercial side. You if you don't mind me saying, because I've known you for a number of years, you seem a lot more at ease with yourself. If you don't mind me saying, that's a compliment, by the
Thank
way.
you.
What's the future for Wendy Peterman in a state agency?
I want to continue building our brand. We started when I first went there. I've rebranded the company twice. We've been through the properties we take on now are the properties that I set my heart on winning. But there's still some way to go. There's bigger and better houses. But for me, I'm in my 60s. I'll just keep that vague. I don't want to be working when I'm 90. I don't know that I'm not going to be, but I certainly want to try and be a bit more refined about what I want to do. So I'd like to be out doing stuff rather than a lot of the day-to-day stuff.
Still being part of the firm, but not getting involved with the minutiae.
Yeah.
So we have these sons for and colleagues and
exactly.
staff. Wendy, thank you for your time today. You've been very inspirational. I hope you boys and girls out there in estate agency land have learned something from Wendy. And on my YouTube channel, we're going to be talking about specific topics, including some of my favourite topics like women in estate agency and how to run a family business. So thank you for your time today, and we'll see you on the other side.
Thank you.